There's more uncertainty tonight for Queensland's cattle industry. Essential export permits by the Indonesian government have not been renewed, leaving the door open for Indonesia to source cattle from another country. It's the latest blow to Australian producers who are fighting the federal government's ban on live exports to Indonesia. Graziers and small businesses have been promised $33 million in compensation, but producers fear it's not enough to stop the industry from collapsing. Our reporter Josh Bavis spent the last few days in the state's northwest.
I'm here with my parents and sort of hoping to take over from them, and I would hope if my children want to one day take over from me, but at the moment I'm not even certain of my future in this industry, let alone my children's future.
Jean Robbins' property is a long way from the abattoirs of Indonesia. She's a mother of one with another baby on the way.
Hey, hungry guts, aren't you?
More than 6,000 cattle on her Hewington property were scheduled to head to southern markets. That was before domestic prices dropped about 18%.
It's unprecedented. I've got no idea what exactly it's going to do. I think there's a big misconception out there amongst consumers that they're going to suddenly see a price drop in their local butcher shop, and I don't believe that's going to happen. They think that producers are making huge amounts of money, so there's a big difference between what I'm getting and what the consumers are paying.
Queensland makes up about 10% of the nation's live exports to Indonesia, but Jean Robbins says the ripple effects are already being felt, despite promises of financial help from the federal government.
Steady. Ah, steady. The trucking companies, the helicopter companies, even our local landmark who we were going to buy our weed spray through, they're now not going to get that business from us, and I assume from quite a lot of other people. You know, that's all income that they're going to be missing out on.
Like most graziers, she was shocked by the video evidence inside the Indonesian meatworks.
A lot of us are emotionally attached to our animals and we don't want to see them suffering, so we want to make sure that for as long as we have control that they are looked after to the best of our ability.
Also horrified is 79-year-old Pat FENNELL, who helped establish the live export trade about 20 years ago. She can't believe conditions have deteriorated so badly.
There was so much resources poured into it. The Commonwealth Department of Primary Industries were involved heavily there with all the international negotiations that were going on. The DPI in Queensland had men on the ground and women, and it was given a lot of priority, and it was done correctly. And to just see it all fall apart like this was quite shocking to me.
More than 300 northern beef producers demanded answers from the government at a public forum held in Mount Isa.
What you have is animal welfare issues that do need addressing. The earlier and the sooner that you recognise that these issues need to be addressed through a supply chain assurance so that you can have and continue to have an industry that does have an optimistic future.
But the minister didn't directly answer the concerns of the graziers.
Because we will be able to then put that supply chain assurance in place. But until such time as we do have that supply chain in place, then the trade, which can't guarantee, can't safeguard the animal welfare outcomes. As quickly as we can put in the supply chain assurance that ensures those safeguards for animal welfare outcomes.
And the graziers were supported by a well-known northern advocate.
On 3 occasions when I was a minister, I had to turn my resignation, and on the 3rd occasion it was taken and I walked out of the cabinet. Now, you know, I also had to walk out of my party that I loved all of my life. Now, having said all those things, you know, the elephant in the room here is, I'm sorry, Mr. Ludwig, when you say that you'll make a decision as to when we're going to send the cattle up there, too late, mate.
They just want to get back to business.
Look, I don't. I think $30 million is just a token gesture. There's an industry that's really hurting. You know, it's people's livelihoods that we're talking about now.
The industry needs to have that trade opened up So less work on that trade. 30 million is be better off going over to help with the animal welfare in Indonesia.
These beef producers say their plea for help is falling on deaf ears.
How do you compensate an Aboriginal stockman and his family that have been living in a cottage on a property, a life they love, work they enjoy, their children going to boarding school and coming home for holidays and riding ponies and having a life like we have, a wonderful life? How do you give him any money when you kick him off the land? There is no compensation that can pay for that.
I, the government and all the people here at this table, industry, want this industry to recommence as quickly as possible. What we are doing is putting in place the supply chain.
Out on the land in Richmond, every day is an anxious wait.
They could wipe out the whole of Northern Australia. You know, the cattle industry in Northern Australia could be decimated.
He fears the multi-billion-dollar trade relationship with Indonesia has already soured.
Unfortunately, governments these days govern for the population, not the people. I don't want to talk about what's going to happen here because it's going to be sad and it's going to devastate a lot of areas and a lot of cattle will die. People can't afford to buy a bale of hay now.
There's only months to go before the wet season arrives, and then there'll be little chance of moving the cattle off the land.
It's very hard to take a hit like this and to know that you don't know when you're going to get the next cheque. So it's pretty hard on them.
After all those years of drought, this year was shaping up to be the brightest financially in a long time. Now, graziers and the industries that rely on them are facing an uncertain future.
Josh Bavis reporting from Mount Isa.